Welcome to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast, where power, politics, and the world's most coveted materials collide. Rare earth elements power the backbone of tomorrow's most critical technologies. With China dominating global production, the US and its allies must align strategically to ensure a stable future. This urgency prompted tech entrepreneurs Daniel O'Connor and Dustin Olson to launch Rare Earth Exchanges, a news and insight platform built to equip stakeholders and decision makers with the tools and intelligence needed to reduce dependency and build prosperous resilience. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Rare Earth Exchanges podcast. You're joined by me, Dustin, my co-host Daniel, and a special guest, Utkarsh Singh from India, who is the CEO of BatX. Ukarsh, thank you for being on the show. Feels like it's been a long time coming. We've had this on the calendar for a while, but thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thanks a lot, Dustin. Thank you, Mr. Daniel, for having me here. And it's truly my privilege. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, you've got kind of quite an interesting history. So you started in marketing and as a CSR, and then you founded a battery recycling company. Can you give us some insights on that journey, how you got started in this company?
Yes, definitely. I think since my childhood, I was always intrigued about doing something for the social welfare. Even in my college days, I was running a non-profit organization, which was for the education of the underprivileged children. And then I had that inside me that what can I do for the society? But at the same time, I realized that to bring change, you need to also have some certain capital. Then I figured out that during my CSR journey, I traveled to a lot of villages in India and I figured out that environmental challenges are coming up big time in India, and definitely climate change is a big problem. That is where I discussed with my co-founder who is a very interesting technical person, and he figured out that yes, electric mobility is something which is going to solve a lot of this pollution that is happening all across our country. As a country, we are known, for one of the largest air pollution in the world, and that is what we wanted to change. And we realized that how we can do our contribution against fighting the climate change, and we realized that if we are able to contribute somehow in scaling up the electric mobility and its adoption in India, and that can only happen if the batteries start being built up from scratch in India. Now, the challenge we realized is we don't have critical minerals, which everybody is talking about today. And this happened in 2017 when we had the eye opening moment that, okay, we have to work on getting the critical minerals. And we started as college young too, how you have seen it Breaking Bad, the two kids in college running around the chemistry lab and trying to figure out what is lithium, what is cobalt, and that thankfully paid off. And today we run a very successful lithium-ion battery recycling company. That was it, a bit of our journey as a student.
That's awesome. So you kind of actually just touched on this just a little bit, but for those who are new to BatX Energies, could you describe just a bit more what you guys do in simple terms and why that matters?
Sure, definitely. So we know that there are, you must have seen periodic table. I think a lot of people who have all been through a science class would have seen a periodic table, and there are 118 elements in that. The key fundamental about all of those elements are it can neither be created nor destroyed, right? Which means these can be recycled again and again infinitely. And that is what we do. We ensure the critical materials which are there in the periodic table to find them in different applications and ensure that those are recycled so that they can be used for another application. And this life cycle keeps on running infinitely. That's how we are going to preserve the natural resources that we have in our world. And that is what we do. And everything at BatX has happened from scratch. We built our technology for recycling of lithium-ion batteries, which primarily have three critical materials, that is cobalt, nickel, and lithium. And as a matter of fact, these materials are very much geopolitically located. So for countries like India, which doesn't have them as a natural resource, it is a very tough task to ensure a domestic self-reliant supply chain. And that's what we are trying to build here back in India, and always happy to collaborate with different countries around the world and develop a self-reliant supply chain within the ecosystem. That's what we do.
Oh, that's great. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, you're great.
Okay, perfect. So before we get into some more technical questions, macro question. If we look at batteries for electric vehicles, and are we talking mostly batteries for electric vehicles or other types of green electric?
Yes, true. That's correct. So we're talking about everything to do in the energy storage space, which utilizes lithium. And if you ask me to put it in very simple term, right? So for a moment, let's forget the entire, fossil fuel economy and let's look at new energy economy. There are three fundamental pillars of new energy. One is generation, second is storage, and third one is distribution, right? So for the generation, there is solar, there is wind, there is nuclear, and various kind of energy. Different applications are being created. But the most fundamental pillar is the storage. Now, when it comes to storage, the maximum amount of charge that can be stored in the least space can only be done by lithium. Therefore, lithium-ion batteries become a very, very suitable solution for storage of the clean energy. So therefore, if you look at your mobile phone, your laptops, or any application for that sort to the electric vehicle or a large truck, so everywhere lithium-ion batteries are used and these can be recycled. So the company, we focused on creating a solution wherein we taken all kinds of different lithium-ion batteries and extract all of these critical materials.
And on that note, I would say that lithium is the key critical mineral. We're not talking about rare earth elements per se here, which are separate. We're talking about critical minerals and specifically lithium. Now, a question on that before we get into some of the concepts that you all are driving forward. Lithium as a critical mineral. Where are we at today with the status of that? What percentage? Who are the biggest suppliers of the core product, and who is majority refining? What does that supply chain look like for lithium?
Yeah, fantastic. No, I think that's a great question. So let me break it down into three different factors. The first one is the mining, second is the pre-processing, and third one is the processing. And then the fourth step is also there, which is creation of the final product, right? So if we look at lithium, the mining is happening in very, very specific geographies around the world. For example, it's in Australia or it's in Chile, right? And these are the two major countries where the mining is happening. Wherein in Australia, it's more of a spodumene ore, which is in the rock form. And in Chile, it is more in the different format, right, which is into brine. So therefore, majority of the companies who are doing the mining are either from China or some of them are from US, right? Or it is governed by some of the US companies. For example, in China, some of the Chinese companies are like Gemfeng Lithium is there, right? And then apart from that, one of the largest players in the extraction of lithium from the mine is SQM. So these are the major players around the world who runs the operations of extraction. Then when it comes to refining, 90% of the world lithium for refining, which is processing operation, comes back to China. That is where a lot of countries around the world are having problem. Firstly, they don't have the efficiencies or the scale that China has today to process. Therefore, the economics doesn't match. And even if they want to break in the supply chain, they have to pay much higher. That doesn't make any economic sense for these countries to get into. So, of course, the world is trying to catch up on that, but the majority is happening in China, and that's where I think it is also a threat, but also an opportunity. So it's up to us what we look at.
On that note, I think this is very important that we delve into this a little bit more, and it's sort of aligned with the premise of rare earth exchanges itself. Now, that 90% consolidation of processing of lithium in China, I'm assuming it's like rare earths where it just sort of global division of labor. It just sort of made sense. How far off are the Chinese in terms of scale, process, and technology when it comes to lithium? So let us say, other countries, whether it's India, US, or what have you, want to start processing that lithium onshore. What are we looking at? How far away are we? Realistically, let's be conservative.
Yes. Okay. Don't hate me to say that, but I think at least 15 years. Yeah, at
How
least
many?
15 years.
Yeah,
15,
that
one
makes
five, at
Of
least.
course, that makes total sense for us. We feel the same, forecast the same for the rare earths. There's a lot of talk right now, but then there's the reality. So with that being said, we're easily a decade plus, depending on the Chinese for lithium production. Now they're opening big lithium deposits in Nevada, which is the state right next to us. Okay, we're in Utah, but again, they got to build a mine. That's another 10 years, what have you. There's conflicts, there's, environmental concerns. Now, are there any before we get into specifically BatX and how you all are different, in terms of lithium, are there any disruptive technologies out there that could replace lithium in the next decade?
See, of course, I would say there are substitutes, but it is very hard to replace lithium because if you look at the periodic table and if you look at the energy density, it is hydrogen, helium, and lithium. So hydrogen and helium are the gases, and third element in the table is lithium. And then it comes sodium. So of course, lithium will always be one step ahead of sodium in terms of holding the energy density, right? So therefore, it will always have that edge. So as the world is getting more and more sleek, even today, iPhones are much lighter. Everybody wants to have more energy in a lesser space. So either
Yeah, of course.
human have to leave that sentiment, or otherwise you should be ready to have a larger, storage banks. So I think lithium will always dominate, wherein, yes, there are the various technologies and has different applications. For example, hydrogen and sodium ion batteries, but all of those have different use cases. So like there is diesel, there is petrol, there is different, forms of oils. Everything will coexist. So my one word answer to that is coexistence of all different technologies.
And on that note, and again, this is sort of macro policy again, in the United States, with the recent big, beautiful bill that was passed, all of our green incentives are gone. So we're going back. It's sort of back to the future of fossil fuels and nuclear. Okay. That's the idea. What's your take as to the rest of the markets worldwide?
Yeah. So I think I can. Yeah, you're saying something?
No, please.
Okay, sure.
Just
Sure.
again, and what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to set the stage for the markets.
Mm,
Where
sure.
do you follow?
100%.
Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yes, 100%. No, I'm happy to share my point of view on that and specifically focus on our country, India, what we are doing out here, and whatever I know of our friends in different parts of the world. So, of course, see, at the end of the day, it all comes to one word, which is called as national energy security, and you will be most secure with what you have, right? So, for example, you have the fossil fuel. So, that is your most secure bet, right? China doesn't have fossil fuel. Their most secure bet is all the lithium and the nickel and the cobalt that they have, acquired all across the world. And for countries like us, right? Of course, we are big on refining of the fossil fuel. We have one of the largest refineries here in India, but we will always be of the thought process where different technologies can coexist together, right? So of course, government has the taxes on fossil fuels and petrol and diesel is always increasing. But at the same time, there is huge push and large incentives and subsidies from the government towards green transition and it brings back to our company thesis that in electric vehicles, everything can be recycled again and again. But once the petrol or the fossil fuel that has been used cannot be recycled, it directly goes back and harming the environment, right? So there has to be a balance. I think what US did with the big bill, I think the focus should have been balanced. And how exactly, Europe is doing it, even the countries with big fossil fuel like Middle East is also having a great incentives for green mobility. I think that is very much
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
Rather
I
than, yeah, I believe
no,
then
no.
that, showing your weakness is not the right way, right? It's better to, be more upfront and focus on developing technologies at scale. That's what China has
I
done.
think, yeah, and I think the point that you're making, and I agree with, is that again, our audience are investors, a lot of investors, and so we're trying to educate and empower people to understand where are these markets going, right?
Yes.
That's key. So
Yes.
I agree with you. I think that the non-carbon electrification movement is unstoppable. I think it's just going to
Yes.
keep going.
Yes.
Dustin, we have a series of questions. I think we should, if you could go ahead and keep some of those rolling, and then I'll come up with some other questions.
Sounds great. So, Ukarsh, let's talk about the net zero waste, zero emissions recycling process. What's unique about your technology compared to other recycling?
Sure. So specifically what happens in our technology, we do a molecule to molecule based extraction process, wherein we have our own hydrometallurgical process, which is very, very much energy efficient. Because if you look across the world, India has the one of the most competitive scrap battery prices. So therefore, if you want to win here, so you need to create a process which is very efficient, which is possible at scale. And the third point is which has the best economies. So that's what we have developed. And why it is different is because we don't emit any part of our, there is no air pollution, there is no liquid discharge in our process. So it is a circular closed loop process. So whatever once goes inside, everything comes out and out. Even if there is certain part which is 1%, 2%, it keeps on rotating and comes in the second or third cycle. So that's what we have created here in India. So which is totally built to have energy efficient as well as closed loop process. So that's what we call it.
So on that topic, just to follow up, in terms of in India and recycling these batteries and the market, where do you all sort of sit in that ecosystem? Like, how does that market look? How many producers are there? High level.
Yeah, sure. So India today produces close to 50,000 to 75,000 metric tons of lithium-ion battery waste on a yearly basis. By 2030, we will have close to 5 lakh metric tons of waste on a yearly basis because the consumption of electric vehicles and different digital assets are increasing, even the data centers here in India. And we, being one of the largest economies around the world and population, our consumption is very high, right? Now, when it comes to number of players, there are only 4 to 5 different refineries here in India. And by refinery, I call them as recycling and refinery are same thing that we call here in India, who are extracting the critical minerals. But in terms of pre-processing, which is like a collection of batteries and crushing them and converting them into black mass, there are more than, I would say, 50 to 70 players which are operational here in India. And today, as a country, we are able to only recycle close to 15 to 20% of our waste generated. But of course, year on year basis, government has also introduced $200 million of incentive and other schemes. So that is all pushing more and more players to come enter. But definitely for the critical mineral extraction process, it is very high end technology.
So that makes sense. So
Well,
basically, there's maybe a handful of actual production level recyclers, and out of them, are they mostly privately held or publicly traded? If investors wanted to know more, we might do an article on that. That's something, is that market open for investment, or is it still sort of privately held and venture capital backed?
it is, I would say, 100% privately owned and venture capital backed markets right now here in India. For the public companies, for them, I think still the market is, first of all, maybe premature. And secondly, technology, there's a huge technology barrier here. Uh, this is a kind of technology that we call as experiential technology. So it is not that you go somewhere and you just buy out the plant and buy the technology and you start running it. That's not going to happen because every day your feed is different. Every batch is different because some batch might have different compositions and the other batch will have a different composition. So every day you have to keep learning it, right? So today we are able to extract 90 is our efficiency rate that has come after third or fourth year of operation. So it takes couple of years for people, and that's why even see there are two ways to get this technology. One is you go out to China and you buy it, and that is banned. You cannot go and buy a hydrometallurgy process from China, right? That's not happening.
Right.
Second way is you build it by yourself, and we have seen across the world, in Europe, in US, and Canada, the people are building the process, but the efficiency rates are still very low. And one thing that is different in India versus the plants that are being built in US is that In India, we collect all the heterogeneous waste, bring it into
Yeah.
one line and process it. Wherein in
Yeah.
US, it's
Yeah.
more of manufacturing scrap coming to one facility. So that is the easiest to do. If your feed is same every day, it is easiest to process. But if your feed is different every day, that's a big challenge. So I think that's where is the right way to do, we believe. Yeah.
And another question, and Dustin, I know we have a list of questions, but this is very important from an investor and market economy perspective. Those 5 producers or 5 to several in India, are they competing globally, or is this mostly a domestic consumption for the sale?
For the sale, a lot of material is today going outside India. I would be very honest about it, because in India, the consumption, and in various countries around the world, the consumption is not yet happening at scale, right? Because look at all around the world, where are the largest factories as big as CATL, BYD in different parts of the world? There is nowhere, right? So unless and until the cell manufacturing has just taken up, and before cell manufacturing, it comes cathode active material manufacturing, right? And that is where majority of material goes in. So that is still to take up in countries like India, and but it is not very far. I can tell you, it is not very far. It is 4 to 5 years from now, where the internal consumption will be developed. Till then, yes, material will be traded all across the world, and that's what we are seeing, not only just in India but all across the world. And it is landing up in just one country.
Understood. That's very, very helpful, by the way. Thank you.
So going on this topic of investors and things like that, you recently announced partnerships with companies like VinFast and Rocklink in Germany. What do these collaborations mean for BatX's growth story? How do you decide who to partner with?
Sure. So both the partnerships have different story. If we talk about VinFast, first of all, they have amazing products, right? And we have always had a thesis of working very closely with the OEMs. And you will be amazed to know, as a company, as our sales strategy for onboarding any OEM for recycling, we never reach out to their sourcing team. We always reach out to their R&D teams. And we share with them that, okay, this is the R&D that we have done. This is how we believe we can achieve better economies for you in your entire supply chain, because we can really bring back the material back into your ecosystem, wherein you can discount it back and your customer can have benefit. So we bring in the entire kind of understanding to the R&D teams. We explain them technically, and then they refer us to their sourcing team, and then we get the contracts for basically, sourcing of their end of life batteries. So if we specifically talk about VinFast, we are working very closely with them for ensuring the complete collection of end of life or any insurance based batteries of their vehicles, and ensuring that we pass on the best value to our customer. So be it VinFast or be it MG or any other OEM that we work with. So we ensure that we are able to give back the right value in terms of money to them for their end of life batteries. And I don't know that how it happens in US, because I believe there is a gate piece out there, but in India it is very competitive. You have to really pay for the batteries and it's very expensive.
So speaking of R&D and some of that process, what does it look like when a battery arrives at your facility? What were some of the toughest technical challenges you had to overcome?
Yeah. So when you look at the entire, and this is a very, very interesting point, when you look at lithium-ion battery recycling, and when you say the battery has come to end of life, so what is the definition of end of life? It is nowhere defined, right? We say the end of life is when a battery cannot be reused again into a different product, right? So in India specifically, or in across the world, it is coming up. There is a mid-world, which is called as second life operations. So as a company, we also focus on second life operations, because we believe we should not waste any ounce of energy which is there into the battery. So unless and until the state of health of battery has not reduced less than 40%, and if when we receive them, if it is at 80%, we put it into a second use case application, where the batteries are again put to use. And then once it comes to end of life, then only we bring it back. So the one of the most critical challenge is to identify when to recycle the battery and when not. That is first part that we focus on. That because when we take it for refurbishing, the payback is always higher for the customer. That is the OEM. So if we are doing the refurbishing, we pay higher. If we are recycling, there is little bit lesser than that. So we ensure and put our mathematical formula that we pay the highest price to our customer. The second step is that if the battery is going for recycling, making sure that we form the right batch. So we mix and match the right set of batteries. So we have the very finest grade of black mass, because the better the black mass, the higher yield we have in the hydrometallurgy. And that's what we focus at. So these are 2 to 3 very initial stage steps that we focus at. And when we get more technical into the entire chemical operation, we look at different parameters like temperature, pH, and different applications, and that how we are able to extract the best yield and purity, because the material that we make, that is cobalt, nickel, and lithium, are all battery grade. And we are the only producer in India which are making battery grade materials at scale.
That's incredible.
Definitely. Definitely.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
Dustin, I had one follow up. So just so we understand, and I want to make sure I understand this, when we are recycling the batteries, are there standards, of course, or is it like with rare earth magnets where each magnet is a bespoke, tailored product? Is it how standardized are the batteries today? If you could, out of 100%, what percentage of that process is standardized today versus custom per the customer?
So per customer, I would say the batteries are same. I mean, customer as in the person from whom I'm getting the batteries on the sourcing side. But when I sell the material, that is the salts of cobalt sulfate or lithium carbonate or nickel sulfate, it doesn't matter. Everything that comes out is uniform and same, because it is all 99.99% pure material. So like I said, you can consider it, just to give you an example, you can consider it like gold. You have a 24 karat gold, you melt it, you again, do the right process, you will again have 24 karat gold. It's nothing different than that. But here, there is no smelting process. It is a chemical process.
Got it.
We're coming up to the end of our show here, but we always do kind of like to ask this question of what does the future look like? So if we're to meet again in 5 years, what does success look like for BatX, and what is India's battery recycling story going to be?
Yes, I think India's recycling story is going to be the largest refiners in the world outside China. And specifically in the South Asian country, region, because India is growing very fast, and our government and the country definitely understands very well the importance of circular economy, because we as a country is very huge on consumption, and if we don't have the right circular economy ethos imbibed in the core of our country, I think that is not a successful model. Therefore, we as a company is very much dedicated to contribute in that. And if I think the nation is focused on circular economy, definitely companies like us and BatX are going to scale very fast. Anyways, year on year basis, we are growing 100%. So I think the future is very bright. And if you ask me how I see future, I think in every home, out of 4 walls, 1 wall is going to be energy storage. So that is the scale that is going to come. And I really bet on that.
So that's incredible. I could imagine a whole wall being a battery.
Exactly.
Dustin, I want to just get a little information on the companies. You're, I think, founded in 2020. Is that correct?
Yes. We are founded in 2020. Yes.
And just give us some high level, to the extent you can share, number of employees, ballpark, and what your growth trajectory is, and if you can name some of the investors, if there are VC firms that can be named, just a high-level summary.
Sure. So in total, we are around on rolls 44 people, a fabulous team, which is spread across people who have 17 to 18 years plus of experience in various fields, and specifically our R&D team. In terms of the management, we have a very passionate management, I would say, because in here, the technology also flows from the promoters itself, because my co-founder and I, we both are technical people. In terms of our growth trajectory, in last 30 months, we have already done close to $25 million in revenue. And in the next 5 years, cumulatively, we are going to do close to $500 million of revenue. That is what we are focusing on, and that is the kind of growth we are looking at. Behind me, you see it is our plant only, right? And this is our hydromet plant, and we are going to grow it at least 10x of the scale that we have today within next 2 years. So that is what our focus is, and we are not restricting ourselves only to battery recycling, because at the end of the day, we are experts of extractive metallurgy. So we are two, passionate chemical team, which is expert of extractive metallurgy. That means we can extract anything from anything on a molecular level. So we are also diversifying in rare earth magnets, and we are also looking at different PGM group materials. So that is what everything is going in pipeline. So we are ought to grow.
Very exciting growth trajectory.
Thank you. And our investors are Zephyr Peacock, which is a US based investor. So Zephyr Peacock is one of our key investors. Thank you.
Excellent.
Great. So, one final question to kind of wrap up the show here. Is there one myth about battery recycling that people often misunderstand that you would like to set the record straight?
Yes, definitely. I think the one myth is there, if you keep your battery at your home after it is over, it is going to grow. It's not going to grow. Just give it to a recycler and get it recycled.
Very good. Very good. Ukarsh, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. Very
Thank you.
insightful and obviously very exciting with the work that you guys are doing in building the recycling part of the supply chain. Hopefully, we'll have you again on the show and get an update on where you guys are at and the success that you guys have seen. For those that
Thank
are
you.
watching, if you like this, you found this helpful, please give us a thumbs up wherever you listen to this podcast. It helps the algorithms and expose the show a little bit more. If you don't want to miss a future episode, please like and subscribe. Ukarsh, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Yes. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Dustin. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
And all the very best to you guys also. Thank you. Bye.